What's up YouTube, Saf here on Super Saf TV, and in this video I'm going to be comparing the specs of the Samsung Galaxy Alpha to the iPhone 5s. So the Alpha has just been announced today and it's really aiming to go for the iPhone market with a more premium build compared to the Samsung Galaxy S5. Now I know the iPhone 6 is just around the corner, but for the time being we can compare this to the iPhone 5s to see how different it is to the iPhone 5s and will it really capture some of iPhone's market. So starting off with the size difference, the Samsung Galaxy Alpha is slightly larger in terms of height and width, roughly about 8.6mm in height and around about 6.9mm in width. It is however thinner, it's almost a millimeter thinner compared to the iPhone 5s. Now the iPhone 5s is already a very thin device, but the Samsung Galaxy Alpha goes that one step further and it's one of the thinnest devices out there at the moment. So Samsung really going for a more compact device that is going to fit in your hand a little bit better. It is larger in terms of height and width because it does have a larger screen. You've got a 4.7-inch screen on the Alpha compared to the 4-inch screen on the iPhone 5s. Now the 6 is rumored to have a 4.7-inch screen, so it looks like Samsung have preempted this and created a 4.7-inch screen which will be directly in competition with the iPhone 6. Now resolution wise, the iPhone 5s currently has a 1136 by 640 resolution, so that's roughly about 326 ppi. They have kept this ppi quite low compared to lots of other devices out there. We've got 1440p screens now which go above a 500 ppi nowadays, such as the LG G3 and the Samsung Galaxy S5 LTEA. But the Samsung Galaxy Alpha also maintains a low resolution, so you've got 1280 by 720, so 720p resolution, but that's roughly about 312 ppi. Now Samsung usually do go for those very high pixel densities, so it's interesting to see that they've kept this quite low. But in comparison to the iPhone 5s, it's quite similar in terms of PPI. The iPhone 5s does have a higher PPI, but not massively. So I think this is the reason why they've kept it to this, just to keep it kind of similar. And they're probably thinking that this is not something that's too important to lots of iPhone users out there. Now looking at the weight, the Samsung Galaxy Alpha is just 3 grams more compared to the iPhone 5s. Now this is quite impressive considering that it's got a much larger screen, but they've maintained a low weight on the Samsung Galaxy Alpha. Now this does come down partly to the build. The iPhone 5s does have that premium aluminium unibody design, so it is metal all around and it looks and feels very premium. The iPhone devices have been known to have this premium sort of build for a long time, and the Samsung Galaxy Alpha is now trying to compete with that. Traditionally Samsung devices have been all plastic, so the Samsung Galaxy S5 for example, and they've been criticized for this quite a bit, Samsung have. But with the Samsung Galaxy Alpha they're aiming to change that, so you've got a metal frame, so you've got a solid metal frame on here, but you've still got a plastic back, so it's the plastic perforated dimple soft touch finish that you've got on the S5 is still here on the Alpha, so it's not fully metal still. Now this does have the advantage of a removable back, which we'll be talking about a little bit later, but is it fully premium? How premium is it compared to the iPhone 5s? That I'm going to leave you guys to answer. The one thing that I do like about that dimple soft touch back is that it feels quite good in the hand and it's quite comfortable to hold, so that is something nice with that texture on there. But how premium is it? That is the question. Now looking at the internals, the Apple iPhone 5s comes with the A7 chip, so that's a 64-bit chip, dual core at 1.3 GHz. It's very fast and has performed very well. The Samsung Galaxy Alpha comes with the Exynos 5 Octa chip, and that's got 8 cores, 4 at 1.8 GHz and the other 4 at 1.3 GHz. Now in terms of performance, we are going to have to put these side by side. The Alpha is performing very well in terms of benchmarks. It's topping things like the Samsung Galaxy S5 as well, so that's quite nice to see, but we will have to put these side by side to see performance because of the different operating systems as well. In terms of the RAM, you've got 1GB on the Apple iPhone 5s, and on the Galaxy Alpha you've got 2GB of RAM, so you've got more RAM on here. Now this will depend on day-to-day performance and because of those operating systems as well. In terms of the different storage versions available, the iPhone 5s comes in 16, 32 and 64GB versions, so you've got those different versions here at different prices. The Samsung Galaxy Alpha comes in just the 32GB version. We may get a 64GB version at a later date, but right now it is just the 32GB version. Neither of these have expandable storage. Now this is something we've always known with the Apple devices, but this is quite something surprising from Samsung that we don't have expandable storage. Now, I wasn't sure about this fully earlier on today if you saw my previous video, but I have confirmed this, and there's lots of pictures of the Samsung Galaxy Alpha without the back cover. You've got a SIM card slot there, but you don't have a micro SD card slot. So this is an interesting move from Samsung. I think it's a bad move from Samsung. I would have liked the memory card expansion like all of the other devices have from Samsung. Now, this is something that draws a lot of people to Samsung devices as well. The fact that you've got the expandable storage, you don't have this on the Alpha. Now, this may be because they wanted to keep the size down, so including a slot may have affected this, but I do think personally it's a bad move from Samsung here. Now, in terms of the cameras, the iPhone 5S has an 8 megapixel camera. It's a very nice camera. I've done lots of comparisons of it with other devices. You can check those out on my channel, even compared it to the Samsung Galaxy S5. The Samsung Galaxy Alpha has a 12 megapixel rear-facing camera, so you've got slightly more megapixels here on the Samsung Galaxy Alpha. We will have to put these side by side to see the actual results and differences between these two. In terms of video, the iPhone 5S films at 1080p. You've also got 720p at slow motion, so that's 120 frames a second, which works very well. The Samsung Galaxy Alpha can film up to 4K, so that's 2160p, so there's definitely an advantage here in terms of resolution. You also do have 720p at 120 frames a second. In terms of the front-facing cameras, you've got a 2 megapixel front-facing camera on the Samsung Galaxy Alpha that's capable of filming 1080p HD. The iPhone 5S still has a 1.2 megapixel front-facing camera capable of filming 720p HD. Now, this may change on the iPhone 6. Hopefully we'll get 1080p on the iPhone 6 from the front-facing camera, but they have stuck to 720p for quite some time on their front-facing cameras on the iPhone models. Now, looking at the operating systems, you've got Android versus iOS. So now this is going to be the traditional war. The Samsung Galaxy Alpha is going to come out of the box with KitKat 4.4.4, so you're going to be getting the latest version here. It is going to have the TouchWiz skin on top, however, so that's the Samsung TouchWiz skin. The iPhone 5S comes with iOS 7, which will be upgraded to iOS 8 very soon. Now, this is one of the things that the iOS updates are going to come directly from Apple, so you're not going to have to wait for any third parties, and you are going to be getting those updates very quick compared to the Samsung, where you are going to have to wait for Samsung to put those through TouchWiz and then come to you. They're not going to come to you directly from Google, so that's something to bear in mind. In terms of which operating system is better, that is going to come down to personal preference. I'm not going to go into a war here. Now, looking at some of the additional features that both of these devices offer, firstly, both of these do have a fingerprint scanner. Touch ID is the one on iPhone 5S, which lets you touch, and it works very well. The Samsung Galaxy Alpha has the same fingerprint scanner as the Samsung Galaxy S5, which is the swipe on the home button. Now, you do have to swipe on this rather than touch, and you have to be pretty accurate with it as well. And I can tell you from experience of using the Samsung Galaxy S5 and the iPhone 5S that the iPhone 5S definitely has the edge here. Touch ID is definitely the best fingerprint ID technology on any smartphone out there, and it does work better. It's a lot easier to use. You can use it in different angles and things, whereas with the Samsung devices you have to swipe pretty accurately and you have to swipe straight as well. Now, the Samsung Galaxy Alpha does come with a heart rate monitor, so you can measure your pulse rate and use it with some health apps, which is quite nice on here. This is not available on the iPhone 5S. Now, in terms of the connectors as well, you've got some different connectors. The Samsung Galaxy Alpha comes with micro USB, whereas the iPhone 5S comes with the Lightning connector. Personally speaking, I always prefer universal compared to proprietary. The micro USB cables are much cheaper as well compared to the Lightning cable that you can go and pick up 4 times the price you're looking at. So this is something to bear in mind, and this is something that I personally feel is a bit more of an advantage for the Samsung Galaxy Alpha. Now, looking at the batteries, the iPhone 5S has a 1560 mAh battery, which is not removable. Now, this is not too great, and for me, it didn't get me through the day. I did have to look for a top up later on in the day, so that is something to bear in mind with the iPhone 5S. The Samsung Galaxy Alpha has an 1860 mAh battery, which is removable. Now, this is quite questionable because the other Samsung devices have much larger batteries. The Samsung Galaxy S5, for example, has a 2800 mAh battery. So it looks like they've gone for a smaller size battery to keep the size of the phone smaller. Is this a good move? I personally don't think so. I would have liked to have had a larger battery. We'll have to see in terms of performance. I know you've got a 720p resolution on here, whereas some of the other Samsung devices have large resolutions which require more processing power. but we'll have to see these side by side compared to the iPhone 5s and see how these two perform. One advantage that the Galaxy Alpha does have is that the battery is removable, so you can carry around a spare if needed, so that is something to bear in mind as well. Now finally, looking at the prices, the iPhone 5s right now, these are the prices that you can expect for the different models. The 32GB version is the comparable model to the Galaxy Alpha, and that right now is going for £629 or $749 off contract. So this is to see the value of the device. This will no doubt drop after the iPhone 6 releases, but this is usually by about £50. Or if they do release another plastic model of some sort like they did last year, then they may discontinue the iPhone 5s altogether. But generally speaking, this will drop roughly about £50. The Samsung Galaxy Alpha, there's no confirmed pricing as yet, but we'll be looking at roughly about £500 to £550 in the UK, roughly about $650 in the US. Now, this is with a September release. September 12th is what we're looking at for the release of the Samsung Galaxy Alpha. So the Samsung Galaxy Alpha is very, very likely to be lower in price compared to even the iPhone 5s. It's definitely going to be lower in price compared to the iPhone 6. So that will depend. If you're on a budget, then it might be a bit more of a better option to go for the Samsung Galaxy Alpha. So those were the key differences between the Samsung Galaxy Alpha and the iPhone 5s. Have Samsung done enough to capture some of the Apple market? That's a question that I'm not too sure about. I think if there is any existing iPhone users, I'd like to ask the question, would you go for the Samsung Galaxy Alpha? Do you think there's enough here to make you move from the iPhone devices? Obviously, when the iPhone 6 comes out, that'll be interesting to see as well, how the official specs of that compared to the Samsung Galaxy Alpha. What do you think of the Samsung Galaxy Alpha? Do drop me a comment below and let me know your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you did, as always, please do hit that thumbs up button for me. It really does help me out. And why not subscribe to the channel? I've got plenty more content coming up on here. Thanks for watching. This is Saf on Super Saf TV. I'll see you next time. If you want to see more regular videos like this one, then be sure to hit the subscribe button, which will be below. If you're on a mobile device, it may be somewhere else. If you want to see my previous related video, then hit the link right here. If you want to stay in touch over Facebook, Twitter and Google+, then all of the addresses will be there somewhere, as well as direct links in the description below. Okay, if you're still watching, then that means you've not done one of those things, so, you know. Yeah. Anyway, I'm just gonna go downstairs. See. Okay. There isn't really a downstairs. Anyway. So yeah.